World leaders are throwing a weak and pathetic Donald Trump aside, and they are building their own armies to assert themselves in the absence of a United States security umbrella. Specifically, Europe is absolutely furious at Donald Trump's continuous threats. Donald Trump continuously saying, I'm going to withdraw from NATO, and Europe is not doing enough. And then when Europe tries to step up and focus on its own defense, Donald Trump's like, you better buy our American equipment. And Europe is like, enough. So the Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, stepped forward, and he's like, you know what we need to focus on right here? We need to focus on building a European army. Let's just bring this army together right now. We don't need the United States. Let's go. Also, President Zelensky of Ukraine saying, let's just bring together some of the biggest powers in Europe. Ukraine will join. We'll build our own army. And if the United States is going to withdraw from NATO, like Donald Trump keeps on saying, we don't need them. We can be a superpower together. There is strength in numbers. While all of that was going on too, you had tens of thousands, may I say hundreds of thousands of people out in Hungary to cheer on the pro-democracy TISA coalition against Viktor Orban's Fidesz authoritarian pro-Putin coalition. We're 24 hours or so away from the election in Hungary, or less at this point, and the people are out there saying they want to be part of the European Union and they don't want anything to do with Vladimir Putin. They had this mass rally where they were saying, go home, Russia, go home, Russia. And this follows Donald Trump making post after post saying, everybody vote for Viktor Orban. Hungary, if you want money, if you want that American cash, you better vote Viktor Orban because we'll financially help you. And the people of Hungary are saying, we know your scams. We know your tricks. We know that you, Donald Trump, are just like Putin. You are authoritarian, vile pieces of trash who just want to destroy our country and set us back. Enough. We are joining forces with the European Union. So let's go through this one by one right here. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez of Spain saying, we are ready to move forward with a common European army, not in 10 years or two, but right now, tomorrow. Europe, let's form an army together and screw Donald Trump and screw what he's turned the United States. And this is the true sentiment of Europe right now. Here, play this clip.
You've probably heard what Spain's proposal is. We are ready to move forward towards a common European army, not in 10 years, not in 2 years, but right now, tomorrow, if you'll excuse the colloquial expression. And those who believe, by the way, that this decision is optional, are mistaken. In the world we live in today, medium powers like those that make up the European Union, we only have one way to assert ourselves from a security and defense standpoint. And that is to build a common defense and jointly assume our vulnerabilities. Otherwise, we let others exploit our vulnerabilities and weaknesses against us.
More from Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez of Spain. And he's also saying we need to speak with moral clarity here. And that means across the world where we see injustice, where we see genocide, where we see massacre, we call it out. We can't just be selective in it. And he said, what we see in Gaza, call it out. He says, what we see in Lebanon, we must not let Lebanon become the new Gaza, as Donald Trump and Netanyahu were just massacring the people in Lebanon. And Netanyahu's been doing it for a while, but even after the ceasefire, you have Netanyahu killing 258 people in one day, over 1,100 casualties. Watch Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez with specific moral clarity right here, calling out Netanyahu and Trump and authoritarians across the country and saying, we need to stand up for basic compassion and human decency. Remember, we're dealing with human beings here. Here, play this clip.
Oh, Europe that stands firm in the defense of international law and a global order based on rules. No, we cannot simply content ourselves with just lament and frustration. Ultimately, one only needs to look at Gaza to see the consequences of this ongoing violation of international law. For this reason, Europe must also be clear, because many countries in the so-called global south are watching Europe. And what they want is for us not to apply double standards, to avoid using a different yardstick depending on the case, or whether it affects Europe more or less. We must not allow a new Gaza to emerge in Lebanon, because when faced with flagrant violations of international humanitarian law, Europe has to act with consistency and integrity if we also want the rest of the world to look at us and support us in the assistance we are giving and providing to Ukraine in its fight for freedom against the invader, in this case, Putin's Russia. And that's why yesterday the Spanish government and I myself proposed that for consistency and also for empathy, the European Union must suspend its association agreement with Israel, because it's evident that it is trampling and violating many of the articles of that association agreement, especially those linked to respect for international law and humanitarian law.
So then in response, you have Netanyahu and Israel, who wants to move his criminal trial, which is supposed to take place in the next 24 hours. He wants to delay it by another 2 weeks. Sound familiar? Like Donald Trump's delay tactics. And he's like, there's all these national security reasons right now. My criminal trial in Israel can't take place. We're going to move that also. You have Netanyahu saying, we're not going to allow any kind of relationship going forward with Spain. And Spain's like, good, we don't want you. And you also have Netanyahu saying, we won't allow French President Emmanuel Macron to have anything to do with any future negotiations with Lebanon, because French President Emmanuel Macron expressed sympathy for the people of Lebanon who were being massacred by Netanyahu. And French President Emmanuel Macron's like, okay, I don't care. And he's been meeting with Pope Leo XIV. And if you've been watching the videos I've been doing on Pope Leo XIV, Pope Leo XIV, in no uncertain terms, the American Pope, right, born in Chicago, calling out Donald Trump and his despicable regime, saying, you do not invoke the name of Jesus or God when you are out there killing innocent people. How dare you, you war criminals? And remember, there was that instance that we've been reporting on, and hat tip to Free Press and others who broke that story. They broke a good story, where the Trump regime called in the Pope's top ambassador in the United States to basically threaten, we're going to do an Avignon papacy, the 14th century papacy, where France moved or forced basically by an invasion the Pope to be in Avignon and killed the Pope and kidnapped the Pope. And the Trump regime is threatening Pope Leo XIV like that. Absolutely freaking despicable. I want to show you right now what the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, is saying about building up an army as well. He's like, look, if the U.S. withdraws from NATO, if that's their game plan, okay. He's like, let me give you the idea of how we can match Russia. Here's what you can basically do. Here's who you can put together to build this country. Here, watch what he says right here.
According to the laws, internal questions, and etc. But there are 4 strong countries which are part of Europe, and these countries, it's between us, UK, Ukraine, and Turkey. This is the army which will be stronger than the army of Russia. That is the answer. Without Ukraine and Turkey, Europe will not have similar army that Russia has. With Ukraine, Turkey, Norway, and UK, you will control security on the seas, not one sea. And this is the answer. And that's why these 4 countries, EU also has to find a way, friendship, strategic, partner way, how to involve these 4 countries and be the strongest union of economy and security.
It's also notable, too, that as Zelensky is saying that, as Zelensky has been helping America's allies in the Middle East, who America's basically abandoned, as America's security umbrella there has just utterly collapsed. And Donald Trump's quid pro quo pay for play schemes, he ain't helping any of these Middle East countries, that's for sure. But while Zelensky is helping these Arab nations, and while the United States has abandoned them, what's Donald Trump doing? Donald Trump is meeting right now with, or Donald Trump's regime was meeting with Dmitriev, one of the top Russian envoys, is just hanging out in the United States as Donald Trump continues to lift sanctions from Russia and extend the removal of sanctions from Russia while lifting up Viktor Orban, Putin's puppet right there. Let me bring you to Hungary right here in Budapest, where the people are shouting, "Russians go home, Russians go home." Here, play this clip. I'll give you another overhead image right here of the tens of thousands of people out there showing support for TISA, the pro-democracy coalition in Hungary, which is expected to win. We'll try to see what stunts Putin's puppet and Trump's puppet, Viktor Orban, tries to do right here. Meanwhile, in addition to the video I just showed you, that interview with President Zelensky, he's also posted the following message. "I told our American partners they could understand whether Putin wanted peace by finding answers to the issue as follows. First, try to organize a meeting at the level of leaders to discuss territories. Putin has refused. Second, if he doesn't want to continue the aggression after a ceasefire, propose deploying American and European soldiers along the contact line. Putin's response was no foreign soldiers of any kind. Why? This can only mean he wants to go forward. Third, he has around 17 million square kilometers of land. Yet he tells Americans, look, what's the problem? It's only about 6,000 square kilometers. Can you imagine that someone who has millions of square kilometers, 70% of which is underdeveloped and doesn't have proper infrastructure, is asking for more? Do we really believe that all he needs is an additional 5,800 square kilometers? This is not his goal. Donbas is a strategic place in Ukraine. Once he has our industrial cities and fortifications in the region, there are only open fields and direct roads to our regional capitals. What I mean is that we understand why he wants Donbas." And again, Zelensky's not holding back anymore. Zelensky also says, if the United States truly thinks about withdrawing from NATO, then European security will be based solely on the European Union, but not in its current form. I think that the EU is in a situation where it needs more countries. The UK, Ukraine, Turkey, and Norway. These are the four strong countries which are part of Europe. Together, the UK, Ukraine, and Turkey have armies that are stronger than Russia's army. Without Ukraine and Turkey, Europe can't match Russia. With the four countries on board, you can wrest control of the seas, have secure skies, and the largest land forces. It's not about offense, because when Russia makes the decision to have an army of 2.5 million people by 2030, Europe has to think about security and how to preserve its independence. The UK, once a member of the EU, there are concerns about agriculture when it comes to Turkey. But you can manage all of this if you have a really great economy. But security comes first, economy second, not vice versa. And that was more of the interview that I shared with you of President Zelensky. Meanwhile, you have Prime Minister Keir Starmer taking a trip to the Middle East to meet with Saudi Arabia and other Arab nations who are looking for allies now that the U.S. security umbrella has absolutely collapsed. The Middle East nations see that Donald Trump is essentially totally capitulating to Iran and allowing Iran to become a major world power after Donald Trump has essentially surrendered to Iran. And so now we see Prime Minister Keir Starmer showing up to try to show that at least the UK is going to support these Arab nations. Also, France announced plans to replace some Microsoft Windows systems in government with the Linux to reduce reliance on US tech and gain more control over its data. I'll show you right now the former US Army commander in Europe, who you've seen on the MeidasTouch network a lot of times, Ben Hodges. He's an incredible former retired general. Here's what Ben Hodges had to say about, he goes, it's pretty remarkable, right, that over a year ago, Trump and Vance yelled at Zelensky in the Oval Office, saying that he has no cards. Now he's the one who Europe and Middle East nations are going to for help with their security, because the United States under Donald Trump is unable to provide a security umbrella and is no longer a leader of the free world. Play this clip.
It was a little over a year ago that President Zelensky was in the Oval Office getting yelled at by the president and the vice president, and this ridiculous assertion that you got no cards and all of that. And here we are today, where Ukraine is helping countries in the Gulf defend themselves against Iranian drones. And they probably are going to have Ukrainian defense industry being supported by Saudi money and money from the Emirates to purchase Ukrainian defense capabilities, even though the American president said we don't need anything from them. So what an amazing turn of events.
And just to remind you of that moment with Zelensky, here is what Zelensky said back last year during his first Oval Office trip of this Trump regime last year, where Donald Trump was yelling at him and J.D. Vance was like, did you say thank you? You have no cards. You have no cards at all. And Zelensky's like, I'm not talking about cards. I'm letting you know the realities of war. And we're trying to be helpful here, as Donald Trump's like, you don't have the cards. And Trump's face was turning so red and it was so damn pathetic. Remember that moment? Here, play this clip.
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning. Sure. First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You
God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
Playing cards.
Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
And then I'm going to do another video of this early this morning, but you can see the Iranian delegation when they arrived in Islamabad. They were greeted like heroes by Pakistan, and right now they're viewed as the victors. You know, when they showed up there, all smiles, laughing, high-fiving. The Pakistanis got them flowers. Iran brought forward a huge delegation of all of its top people who got a hero's welcome in Pakistan. And we'll keep you posted on all the discussions that are going on there and what's actually happening. So hit subscribe, help us get to 7 million subscribers. Thanks for watching. We're going to keep giving you the facts, keep giving you the truth, and we'll learn more about this European army, and we'll keep reporting on it. Hit subscribe right now. Thanks so much. New Midas merch. Head to store.MeidasTouch.com today and get yourself the best pro-democracy gear and show your support. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.